Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as I think you know now, because we are in our 26th year, I interview artists about their craft, what they're working on, what they've accomplished in the past, what they might be planning for the future. We have poets on, we have other kinds of writers, novelists, editors, short story writers. We have other sorts of artists on as well. We have had on painters, actors, sculptors. It's a pretty wide net. We even have people, very important here on Cape Ann, who are the promoters and the cheerleaders for art, who make sure that it's available to all of us. And we have such a special program tonight. As I pointed out, it's a very, very wide net. So if you have ideas for a guest who might be a good person to be on the Writer's Block, whether a promoter of art, someone who cares about art here on the Cape, or someone who sculpts, or someone who's a poet, watch for our address at the end of the program. We'd be glad to get your suggestions. I also want to remind you that the Writer's Block, along with all the other original programming out of Cape Ann TV, is the original result of cable access television right here in Gloucester for all of the Cape, Essex, Manchester, and Rockport. You can't get that wonderful community service with Dish. So when you see those ads on TV, don't pay any attention. Stick with cable. Tonight, I'm very happy to say we do have three executives who are very key here in Gloucester and for all of Cape Ann, indeed the region, in promoting and furthering and presenting art at Cape Ann Museum. They are Rhonda Falloon, who is the director, the executive director at the museum across town, Martha Oakes, who is the curator at the museum, and Stephanie Buck, who is the librarian archivist and responsible for the communal memory of the museum. Very much, very, very happy to have you here at the show, Rhonda and Martha and Stephanie. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you, John. Our pleasure.
The museum is a really vibrant place now. It was perhaps less vibrant in the past, but it was renovated over a long period. It opened last year in the summer, August, I think, of 14, and now it is really a dynamic, fun place to be. I like being in it. It just feels exotic. It feels fun to be there. And I wanted to ask you first, Rhonda, you're the executive director. What was the vision, and what's the vision going forward for Cape Ann Museum?
Well, the vision all started with systems. It all started with heating and temperature and air conditioning and all these systemic needs that we had in the building. And that really was what drove the whole vision in many ways, to take better care of the collection. We had some really old systems that needed to be replaced. But what that need did was it gave us an opportunity to look at the collection, rethink how we tell the Cape Ann story, and take this opportunity to tell it better than we did before. So I think, we have a disparate collection. We have artifacts, we have art, fine art, we have sculpture, we have ship models, we have full-size vessels, and so why are all these pieces together? And I think before, visitors specifically from away, but maybe on Cape Ann as well, might not have understood why we had this disparate collection and how it all fit together. And so I think the new vision for us is to tell the Cape Ann story better, and I think with this renovation, we've reinstalled the collection, we've put pieces together in a certain way that I think give people a much better idea about what Cape Ann is and what the Cape Ann Museum is all about.
How long were you closed for the renovation?
We were closed for 10 months.
And it opened in August?
We opened in August of 2014, so we've been open a year and a few months.
Were there really problems with, because of the humidity or the heat or lack of heat, that the artifacts being deteriorated?
It hadn't come to that point, but for us to be good stewards, the buildings were made up of 1930s buildings, 1960s buildings, and then a 1980 addition. So we really had to look at the older parts of the building, and the lighting hadn't been upgraded since the 30s and 40s. The like I meant, the sprinkler system, bringing the building up to code. So to be good stewards and to make sure that we were taking good care of the collection, we really needed to bring those things up to speed.
Martha Oakes, I want to first ask what a definition of curator, really, for our audience, and then ask you about a couple of programs that you've recently curated. What is a curator?
The curator is responsible for the permanent collection that the museum owns and interprets and shares with the public, for presenting it, for making sure it's taken care of. A curator is also responsible for special exhibitions, bringing things here to Cape Ann that have some connection to the community that people would like to appreciate in their backyard rather than traveling around the country to see things. It also has an educational component, interpreting things, giving them some meaning for people that they might not have any, might think they have no interest in something, but to sort of challenge them to be interested. So it's a very diverse occupation.
So you're in charge of the whole attic and making sure that the attic is displayed?
So to speak, rotating things in and out of the attic.
Tell me something about a couple shows that I've seen recently, were the Roger Martin show, which was a wonderful blend of his verbal work, his poetry, and his art, and the later Sloan collection. How long does putting together one of those shows take?
Well, it depends on the scope of the exhibition and how ambitious we're being. In the case of the Roger Martin exhibit, which featured Roger's poetry and his graphic arts and his paintings, it maybe took 6 or 8 months to pull that together and install it in the gallery, and then it was on display for 5 or 6 months. Something like the John Sloan exhibition, which is on display now, takes quite a bit longer. Things are drawn from across the country, so there's a lot of paperwork and legwork involved in something like that.
But he spent much less time here than Roger, who lived here most of his life.
In the last few years, we've enjoyed doing shows like Roger's, where we take an individual who has multi-talents and weave the whole story together in the gallery. The first time we did that recently was a couple of years before Roger Martin's exhibition, an exhibit about the Rocky Neck art colony of the 1940s and 50s, and we combined art and also the writings of the poet Vincent Ferrini, which sort of informed the art and vice versa, and had some readings presented as some of the programming in connection with that exhibition. So we're always trying something a little different, especially when it comes to the contemporary artists who are here today in Cape Ann.
Stephanie Buck, you are a librarian, or in a tonier way, archivist. I want to ask you first, is there a difference between a librarian and archivist? And then I want to get more into the responsibility of being the artistic memory of Cape Ann.
Well, there is a difference. Librarian deals mostly with books, although these days they are branching out into, if Sawyer Free Libraries evidence, into more electronic systems. But a library is not mandated to keep everything. They only keep everything. They keep what the public want. They keep what people frequently want to access, and they're not driven to save everything else. An archivist saves everything.
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 Do you decide what is kept, or do you have to meet and decide?
There is a collections committee that I bring the stuff to say, this is what we're going to take. Yes.
If you saved everything, would you not run out of room fairly quickly?
Well, we're reaching that point now. We've saved enough that now it is getting a little strained, but we'll always find room for more.
Now, what you decide to save as an archivist, is that only the textual materials, or is the archivist responsible for what paintings or sculptures are?
No. As the archivist, I just deal with papers, documents, books, and we also actually deal with the audio-visual end of it, so old films and photographs.
And unlike a traditional library, you're not open to the public to come and take things.
No, we're not a
materials
lending
in.
library, we're totally a reference library.
So people can apply for time to come in and use.
Well, they can
materials.
just come in, the hours that we're open, they can just come in and sit in the library and do
use
whatever it is they
materials
want.
there.
Yeah,
And you're pretty busy down there? Or-
we're pretty
I've-
busy,
I've-
yes.
I've come down there a couple of times and there's been no chairs available.
With our nice big round table.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty busy. We have some people contact us by email and by telephone, so then we're doing the research for them, but a lot of people like to come in and do their own research.
I want to go back to Rhonda if anybody
can I
wants to.
introduce-
Oh, please,
Um,
please.
Even though Stephanie's responsible for the archives and I'm responsible for paintings, there's a lot of back and forth. And when we set out to do an exhibition, we go take a look at what she's got down there first so we know what our resources are. And also, we have a lot of back and forth about should we take something, whether it's a painting, I'd value Stephanie's opinion, or a piece of furniture, and vice versa, I'd like to think.
So you would go to the archives to find out the record of what paintings are available without going to the painting?
No, but say for
themselves?
Roger Martin, I knew what paintings were available, but I was looking for some of his published works, and did we have copies of it already in our archives? Did we have some of his unpublished work, or could we perhaps get it? What photographs might we have that were taken of Roger, or Vincent Farini, or John Sloan over the years? And so the archives is really the backbone of much of what the museum does when we go to do an exhibition or a program.
Or a recording, or a
yeah,
film.
to see
of
what
them,
we
or-
have.
I think that's what makes our museum very unique, because our mission is so focused on Cape Ann. Everything we collect is about Cape Ann, so everything that Stephanie collects for the library archives has some relevance to everything, all the art that's on the walls or the sculpture or whatever. They're all so interconnected. So that's why one exhibition requires the work of both of their heads to put really full picture together.
And one great example is the Fitzhenry Lane Catalog Raisonné, which we're doing now, which will be an online compendium of all of Fitzhenry Lane's known works, plus historical information drawn mainly from our archives that sets the scene for where Lane worked, who his patrons were, what was going on in his paintings, and it's a project that's used every resource we've had, from the library to the paintings to the education staff. So Henry. Did I say Henry? I hope I said Henry.
Still not used to it. It's Henry Lane. It was Hugh was deposed. All of the topics that we're talking about, the archives and the money involved and the storage of paintings, presentation of paintings, is all under your purview, Rhonda. And how do you do it?
Why isn't my hair more gray than it?
Well, frankly, yes. You have to worry about preserving the artifacts, the reason for the museum. You also have to worry about preserving the museum. And that means money, and that means outreach, and that means going beyond Cape Ann. How do you do it?
I would say I don't do it alone, number one. We have an amazing board of directors. I did want to talk a little bit, go back for a minute when you asked about sort of the thinking behind the renovation, because not only did our goal, our motto was sort of reaching out and strengthening within. So the strengthening within was really taking care of the building and taking care of all the needs that we had within the museum. And reaching out really was talking to people and letting people know about the museum, making sure that people felt that it was accessible to them, and making more friends for the museum. Really letting. I think people always call us the hidden gem, and we've been working very hard not to be hidden anymore, to remain a gem, but not hidden. And so that renovation gave us the opportunity to talk more with the public and communicate with people and let them know that we were here, that we are a collecting institution, and that we also, it's an expensive undertaking to run a museum, and to take care of all the artifacts requires a great facility, and it requires amazing staff, people to take care of it and to make sure that it's accessible to
So
everyone.
the museum is still collecting.
We are still collecting art and artifacts all the time. Even though storage continues to be an issue for us, it doesn't stop us. We'll find a way to make sure we can keep things that we should be keeping.
That's a question I want to ask Stephanie and Martha. where are all of these sculptures and paintings, and where are all the
Papers.
material, where's all the paper? It's not all downstairs in that one space where you work, and it can't be all in the physical building on Pleasant Street.
Everything is in the physical building on Pleasant Street. We're fortunate in that respect. And some of our lower levels have a climate-controlled storage area that is full. So, and then we have some additional areas upstairs in the building. So everything is there. Everything is that we've been collecting
old
since
paintings.
1923 is all there.
Are there secret basements that go down several stories?
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to ask that, and I'm glad you gave me an opportunity. And that's where all the important stuff is, the copy of the Declaration of Independence and some of the Pilgrim's
Right,
early
right,
letters and that kind of thing is
Yeah,
down
but
there.
we don't let people know about it.
I did not imagine really that everything was in that building. I thought there was be a, I don't know, the equivalent of.
Off-site storage or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
right.
personal storage.
Right.
area.
A lot of
Some
museums
them-
have off-site storage, and we're hoping to avoid that by moving things around a little bit more and perhaps expanding some more at 27 Pleasant Street, but to keep it all there would be a great advantage for us.
I know the circulation of things is a very problem. I went to the Fine Arts 3 weeks ago looking for a specific painting that I have gone to 20 times, and it's not up anymore. Probably won't be up for another 20
It's
years.
always,
until it
it's
recycles
always
through.
best to check in advance before you go
Yeah,
to the museum.
I know.
It's just,
We have people come in and look for their favorite on the wall, and then we have people who say, that painting has been on the wall for 30 years. Isn't it time for you to change it? So, it's hard to keep your visitors happy.
Do the Fitzhenry lanes always stay up?
they're always on display.
Yeah.
Yes.
And are the Fitzhenry Lane materials the ones that almost everybody comes to look for?
No,
No?
no, they're not. Actually, most people come looking for genealogy and artists, the history of artists. We have an extensive collection
So
of
the
papers
museum-
on artists.
Not the genealogy of the artist, but you mean
No, no,
family
so just
genealogies
family
of
genealogy.
residents of Cape Ann?
Yeah.
I didn't know that was stored there.
Oh yes, yeah, we've got a lot of stuff, a lot of letters, log books, account books, ship agreements. You think anything we've got?
So it's
Business
Gloucester
records.
City Archives and the
Church
Museum's
records.
archives and the library's archives
Yeah.
are all different troves.
Yes, we do work together, but they are different. The city is more the municipal records, and the legal, vital records. We have the more personal records.
Letters,
That's
journal,
the letters and journals.
diaries.
I expect after this program is aired, the contributions to the museum will skyrocket. I
We hope
you-
so.
let-
Thank you.
Let me know. I'd like to ask some questions about the future. Rhonda, is the museum planning on any more physical acquisitions in and around the museum? And/or is it actively looking for more lanes, for instance, or other
Right,
particular
yeah.
targeted artifacts?
I mean, we always have to answer that last question, we always have a list of things that, the museum has. Edward Hopper painted, much of his work is based in Gloucester, and we have one drawing, so how wonderful would it be to have an Edward Hopper painting or a Stuart Davis painting? We have great drawings by Stuart Davis, but no paintings. Winslow Homer, we have a few pieces, but he spent a lot of time in Gloucester, and so there are some, major artists that we would probably never be able to purchase a painting, but there may be private collectors who would consider making a gift to the museum with those major artists. And then there are plenty of other pieces that we look for all the time. We may have 3 pieces by someone whose work is great, but we might not have their greatest work, and so wouldn't it be wonderful to have a Gloucester scene instead of a New York scene or something by a certain artist? I'm
I think
trying
not
to think of
too
who I'm
long ago,
mentioning.
I checked on the cheapest, not the cheapest, that's not the wrong, the least expensive Davises are now several $100,000,
Right.
I think.
But there are people who collect Cape Ann art here who have wonderful examples of, give me some examples of names of,
Teresa Bernstein.
Teresa Bernstein, exactly. And artists who are contemporary people who are working now who may not be in a position to make a gift to the museum themselves, but someone may be collecting their work and would end up making a gift to the museum. We really don't have much of an acquisitions fund, so most of the work that comes into the museum is given as a gift. So we are always collecting. We don't want this stuff to go off Cape Ann. We want it to stay here where people can enjoy it, where it's created.
And people are really generous. It's
Yeah.
amazing what people give to us. People's generosity is really quite amazing, whether it's the gift of an object or the gift of money to take care of an object. We've, in recent years, made wonderful progress preserving things by generous gifts given just for that purpose. And then also people, we have a couple of foundations we work with who are interested in collecting art by contemporary Cape Ann artists. So that gives us an opportunity to sometimes purchase things. It doesn't always happen, but there are donors who realize it's important sometimes to
Let me ask
step
you,
up.
Martha, another question about the future. How many shows ahead are you planning or dreaming of? Maybe not even planning, just thinking, well, maybe 3 years out.
We were talking about 2017. We're pretty well set through 2017.
Okay, we're taping in the fall of 2015.
Right.
So you're looking a year and a half
2000s
ahead?
Right. And we've already started to talk about what we might do for Gloucester's 400th anniversary in 2023. And we would like to be spearheading something that's comparable to past celebrations. That would be a very successful and pleasing thing to work on, don't you think, Steph? So that gives us a few years. I don't know how many years
We
that
should
is.
all be here by
2023.
then.
Right.
Yeah.
And collaborate with some others, I think, for that as well.
And I want to ask you a future question, Stephanie. Paper is getting less and less valued, I should say, in the electronic age. Or perhaps not less and less valued, but it's being transferred more and more to electronic platforms. What are the plans in your library for that?
Well, we would like to digitize as much as we can. We've got our photographic collection is pretty well digitized. We haven't really gone to the documents yet. Some of the logbooks.
You mean
and
to
some
scan everything?
Yeah, scanned and available, to look at through the computer, through electronics. But sort of the rule of archivists is you never throw away your paper copy. You always have to keep your paper copy because electronics and the internet and everything, they change so rapidly that what worked, like I recently got a new computer and it doesn't read discs. I can't put a disc in it anymore. It has to be a flash drive. So you just keep your paper copy. Don't throw your paper copy away.
There are computer archaeologists now
Yes,
whose
right.
occupation is to go
Well,
back and retrieve
I mean,
material.
talking about having a collections of letters, that is going to be a real conundrum because everybody uses email or texts or whatever they do now. There's very little handwritten words anymore, and all that is lost. It's a real.
And then if somebody happens to drop a magnet on your computer,
Oh, yeah.
everything's gone anyway. I often do some research on the internet, and you find huge tomes of unforgotten stuff that's been scanned.
Yes.
And I always think of the poor soul. Somebody's turned those 400 pages over and over.
But thank
over and
goodness,
over.
otherwise you wouldn't be able to see
Yes,
them.
no, I wouldn't.
Don't you think, Steph, there'll always be some excitement and joy in coming to see an actual document?
Oh, yes.
So there'll always be, even though you can reach such a huge audience by being on the internet, there's nothing like seeing the original document, which people
Turning
can
the
do.
page yourself.
Yeah.
I want to ask, start with you, Stephanie. What's the one object or item that the library needs most? If you could snap your fingers and call it down.
Actually, going against everything I said in a sense, but also electronics, is I would really like to have, right now people have to ask, when they come in, they have to ask us, the people that work there in the archive, for if we have something. I would like to have a monitor out in the library floor so they could actually just look for themselves to see what we have and whether it's useful to them.
Do you still have any old card catalogs?
No.
Are those at all?
No.
Just for
no, it's
nostalgia?
all on the computer, so
I was
yeah.
hoping. Martha Oakes, what would you, as a curator of the stored collection and also the person who puts on the programs, what would you like to have if you could?
Rhonda
Make a-
won't like it, but
make a
an
wish.
entirely new building right there, attached to our current facilities, with
Which side would you attach it to?
the back side,
The back
Elm
side.
Street side.
Is that,
The parking lot? Taking the parking lot? Okay.
That would combine storage, exhibit space, and some workspace for
So
collections work.
and you could open it in 2023?
Wouldn't that be great?
I could ask Rhonda, what would be your chief wish?
I don't know that I disagree with you for space, Martha, but I would like a few more people to fill that space as well. So I
the
think it would
staff.
be great to have a few more amazing staff like the two who are sitting here. There are amazing people working at the museum, but we can always use some more work as well. But space is a big deal.
I mentioned to our director here, Eric Archer, that I would plug something that KPN TV did for the museum. There's a wonderful tape that accompanies the Fresnel lens, an aerial tape done by Eric and one of our producers here, Jim Capillo, that's very, very nice, done with a drone camera. And so I wanted to plug that because I think the cooperation of KPN TV and the museum is excellent. And I would say it would be great if you could have a TV studio over there. In the new room, in the new space.
We'd use
You
one.
know.
We could use somebody to
Yeah.
film all of our things. We talk about it all the time, so we need more staff.
So we'll make a public plea for $20 million, and maybe that'll happen.
We're doing a strategic plan to start thinking about space and staff.
you are.
Our last strategic plan was 2010 to 2016, so we're just about to start thinking about what's next.
Good.
Yeah.
I look forward to
It's
seeing
exciting,
that in
yeah.
a couple of years.
Yes.
I'm sure it'll take a couple of years.
Yeah.
We're running out of time here. I want to thank you very much, Rhonda Falloon, Director of KPN
My
Museum,
pleasure.
Martha Oakes, the Curator of KPN Museum, and Stephanie Buck, the Archivist Librarian of KPN Museum. It's been wonderful to have all three of you down here explaining the missions and the spirit and the future of the museum. Thanks.
Thank
you,
you.
Jen.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for being with us too on the Writer's Block. If you have learned something about KPN Museum and its duties and its obligations and its art here on the Cape, serving all of Cape and even indeed the Northeast region of the United States, then the Writer's Block has done its job. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next week on the Writer's Block. Good night.